Alright. Got to fix this bloody shed door. Needs to use screws. How the hell do you use this? What? God's sake. T-Rex would know how to use this. T-Rex could use tools. I mean, is that right? Oh, hang on. We'll leave it for now. What's this? T-Rex tool use rebuttal. How smart was T-Rex? Testing claims of exceptional cognition in dinosaurs. A rebuttal. It's time. I'm here.
Where
Sorry.
have you been?
I've been trying to fix things.
We've been here for months.
Oh, sorry, I lost track of time.
We have T-Rex videos to make.
Rebuttaling time.
Oh no, I'm excited.
Get on with
Let's
it.
go, yeah.
Let's go. Hello and welcome back to BoneHeads, everyone. It's really nice to finally be back, kind of in the studio again. I know we've had a few episodes recently, but it feels like it's been a while since we've actually sat down and recorded something.
A very long time.
It has, yeah. So I'm Ben of Ben Thomas
Eddie. Benji Thomas.
of the BoneHeads.
Oh, and I'm Hamzah, and I'm going to say from the University of Portsmouth.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
we all
true.
are.
I represented it better.
Okay,
Oh yeah, because you were on the news, weren't you?
Oh,
I
yeah.
was to work on an actual tyrannosaur, so
where was that?
Check that out.
yeah. Well, so you can put a link to
I'll link it, yeah,
to the news article, but that was an experience. Can't say much yet, so
No.
just,
But we
just
have
keep an eye out.
an official T-Rex expert with us
God,
today
please don't.
to dispel these
Don't,
these
please
claims.
don't.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's a travesty you weren't invited on the paper, wasn't it?
Please don't, honestly. I'm going to get people commenting me now, just like coming after me.
I'm going to ask you every single question they've ever had about T-Rex. You know all the answers is the thing, because you've seen a real specimen now.
This is an attack at me for some reason.
I mean, so T-Rex must be a crocodile then, because I thought you were. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they walk on all fours.
Oh yeah,
they do 65. Yeah. That's true. But anyway, so today we are bringing to you the controversial debate that has sparked in the scientific world. You may remember, potentially, we did mention it in one of our previous episodes. In January 2023, there was a paper by a neuroscientist who applied this new technique, basically, or not a new technique, but it's never been applied to dinosaurs before, of basically estimating their cognition, and came to the conclusion that specifically large body theropods such as T-Rex, as you can see, we've got our T-Rex representatives here,
including one a tool using.
Yeah, basically claimed that the T-Rex was about as smart as a baboon, or like some non-human primates, and therefore could potentially have used tools. Now, obviously, this got a lot of media attention, because it's T-Rex that they use as
it
an
normally
example.
happens, yeah.
So that's going to happen. But it's paleontologists have decided to respond to this because these are quite exceptional claims.
It was quite public.
Yeah, got a lot of media attention. So this new paper is basically rebutting it and kind of criticizing some of the methods and coming up with their own estimates of how smart these extinct animals were. So there's a lot to get through. It's very interesting. We've kind of had to read up a bit on a lot of neurobiology, which not like our strong suit. So hopefully we do all right with it. I think we will generally have an understanding of what is being said in this paper now. But yeah, it's really interesting, and so we thought we'd do a dedicated episode to it. Considering that we covered it last year.
Follow up, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, as we're known, we're the boneheads. We're better with bones than we are with actual the brain and
also no, because boneheads. We do know heads as well, I suppose.
Oh god, we've set ourselves up for there.
I don't know, but yeah, basically it's an important topic, as Darren Naish specifically has said in a Tetrapod Zoology blog post, because of the big media attention. This is going to influence the public's perception of these animals, and potentially even future reconstructions in like whatever Jurassic World is doing next. They're going to have a tool using T-Rex in the next film, I'm sure. But yeah, just the general understanding of these animals' biology, it's definitely going to be heavily influenced by these claims, and so it was needed to be they needed to test it, and it's come up with some interesting results, but not necessarily surprising results, as in
it's backed up some ideas that we already knew. So,
essentially,
it's good because it's like when you get these claims and scientists have to respond with rebuttals, it kind of helps reinforce some of that knowledge, like just taking it for granted. And
yeah, it was old ideas were challenged with this new interesting method. They've now revised it essentially and found that actually it's, what we already knew generally was correct. But as far as we
understood,
we're going to try and keep it fairly concise. There is a lot of moving parts in these, so we'll just get straight into it, I think.
I wanted to start with why is dinosaur intelligence born? Why do we want to research that?
Yeah,
I think it's just because birds today are considered quite intelligent species. You got corvids, the parrots, other animals like that are very intelligent, and obviously we're fascinated by our own intelligence, and we've tried pinpointing sort of when that has evolved, and with birds following similar-ish trend.
What with tool use and
general like larger brains. It's interesting to find where in their evolution that has started to appear.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so that's one of the things that is like the main issue with this is how do you kind of reconstruct the brain of a very long extinct animal that's very far removed from its living relatives. And so the two animal groups that we can use today to like estimate non-bird dinosaur, so the extinct dinosaur brain sizes, brain structure, are the crocodilians and the birds themselves, the living dinosaurs. So if we we've got some helpful figures from the papers. Oh, here we go. Let's start with this one.
Yeah.
If we
I remember
if we switch to this.
Yes, because I remember there was a tweet.
Yeah, I can't lie.
paper.
When I saw this on Twitter, I did not take any like sense of it because I was just like, oh, this is cool. Someone's just joined it for fun, and then realized it was the idea of what the paper was like saying, and I was like, oh wow.
I believe there was a tweet around the original 2023 paper that talked about them potentially using trees as tools. So this is a nice visualization of it, flipping over Ankylosaur.
I do
really quick
like
as well.
It would be effective.
It would be. I really like it, and it implies working together well.
So how have we measured dinosaur intelligence in the past? You may have heard of the term EQ, or encephalalization quotient, and that is basically the ratio between actual brain volume / mass, because that's interchangeable, and the predicted value in a species of a given mass, and that's normally created by using a regression graph where you've got a range of reference species. So let's say that's our birds and reptiles. Make that graph, and then you plot, say, T-Rex along that line, and see whether it is above or below that line, and that will tell you whether it has a high or low EQ. And generally, that's been used to infer intelligence.
Yeah.
For example, humans have a very high EQ, so that's been said smartest, lovely jubbly. Whereas other animals fall wherever along it. Yeah, and obviously it's been used a lot with extinct animals because generally, we don't get brains. They're quite soft. They don't really preserve.
No.
Not a lot of bone in them. But we do get things like endocasts and endocast cavities. We can use to estimate that, but we'll get into the trickiness later of why even endocasts can be super difficult to work out brain size from. And there's also other flaws with EQ, such as differences in morphology. So mammals and birds have very different shaped brains, and as we can see, dinosaurs have shaped brains from birds. Difference, and even things such as sexual dimorphism can affect. So intraspecific can't really be used for that.
It's not as simple as it might first appear. There's a lot that needs to be taken into account. And so one of the main differences, so if we just take this down and switch to this is
this is really
actually
cool.
This one will be useful to explain first.
Yeah, so see how the morphology changes from your sauropsids, your non-avian sauropsids, into your ornithodyrans, which are the ones in the grey, and then you have your aves. Yeah,
so the main regions we're talking about here are the ones in the green and in the blue. So together, these are called the telencephalon, and so it includes basically, yeah, it includes the olfactory bulbs and tracts, which are the blue regions, plus something called the pallium, which is the green bit. And that's the region that deals with the higher cognitive functions, and it's equivalent to the cerebral cortex of mammals. So these are the bits that are primarily being measured. It's not like the entire brain. Sometimes it's the entire brain, as we'll see, a bit inconsistent with the previous study. But you can quite clearly see there how different the layout of the organs are in crocodilomorphs and other living reptiles compared to the brain, the brains of birds. It is quite striking difference there.
And so, yeah, there's been lots of different ways to sort of refine EQ and maybe find alternative methods to infer intelligence. And the author Herculano Cruzel, butcher of a name. Anyway, she's a very prominent neuroscientist. She's published many papers sort of on this topic, especially with neuron counts, and she's even studies on fossil hominids and rodents.
Yeah, applying it to that.
That seems to have been quite successful.
I think, yeah, because so looking at hominids and rodents, obviously we have very close living relatives of them, so it can be applied accurately. The issue is then when you come non-bird dinosaurs and pterosaurs, because they are very different to what's a lot their closest living relatives today. It becomes a bit more problematic.
Time span we're dealing with is also like
different. much more time has passed as well, and much more changes have happened. Yeah.
But yeah, she's had many studies on this, and so on extant animals with the technique, and she then decided to apply it to dinosaurs. 2023, and I quite like how I think even in her own paper she describes the method of determining neuron count as essentially turning the brains into soup.
Yeah, I saw that you wrote that. So how did they do that? Just to measure the density, they just
so they just turn it into
liquefy it,
and then you can essentially just count every single neuron in that area of the brain.
I thought it was really cool. That's actually really cool. Where
the soup.
No, the soup.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that she did not take into fact how the endocarp is not the whole brain.
Well, we'll get on to that.
Yeah. So that's an important point. If we just go to our other.
So do you have to keep exiting it and then opening it? Can you not just like click?
You're right.
I was just wondering. I was like,
it's just so I remember which one's which. Yeah. Anyway, we can do whatever.
It's just so cool because
here is a brain of T-Rex.
Because that just gives me ideas for the idea I was going to do for my PhD and how many flaws I would have had with the idea that
I'm sure you'd have come across the literature. Basically, what we're saying is, one of the assumptions that was made in the 2023 paper is that the brains of the non-bird dinosaurs would have filled the entire endocarp, which is the space for the brain that you get from like maybe 3D scanning the insides of a skull. And it's basically this: the cranial endocarp is the whole thing that's like physically made up by the gaps in the bones. But this is kind of estimated structures inside the endocarp, as you can see here. The brain itself doesn't take up the entire endocarp. And that's a very important thing to remember, because you can't just use the shape of the endocarp itself. It's more about how much of it is taken up.
And with her paper, with the theropods, she assumed that it took up 100% of the space, whereas the ornithischians, it took up 50%. But this is partially based because the data she used from the literature. So when it comes to the extinct taxa, she found data, other paleontology papers.
And they were
some of them assumed 50%, others assumed 100%.
Yeah. So what this new paper therefore assumes in that how much of the endocarp it takes up is that it's going to be more like crocodilians rather than birds. So in birds, it takes up more of the endocarp, and mammals as well. So in most birds and mammals, the endocarps are very good proxies for like the size and shape of the brain.
They looked at like the scars on
you get traces on the endocarps themselves.
That's cool.
So it's showing that they're right up against it. However, in crocodilians, it's around 42%.
It was 42%
that it takes up. And they found that is probably the basal ancestral characteristic for archosaurs as a whole. So that includes dinosaurs. So they'd have started off with brains that don't take up the whole endocarp. And so when you get to things like Tyrannosaurus rex, that's probably the condition they had. As you can see here, there's all of this kind of the purple space where there's just other types of tissues.
Let it breathe.
Yeah, and they're nice and loose. It's I did write what was it?
Knock its head.
Yeah, it's the meningeal tissues, so the dura mater and the arachnoid mater, things like that, cerebrospinal fluid. So you can't use the antipass to accurately.
So that was sort of one of the first problems. Probably the next one is to do with thermoregulation.
Yeah, so this is weird.
Yeah, so first, before applying the neuron count scaling to the dinosaurs from the birds and sauropsids, she decided to determine whether they fit the regression of sauropsids or birds, and that was done by comparing their brain mass to body mass ratio, and whether they fall, as you can see on the screen there, which line they fall on, whether it was red, blue, green, and that meant she then applied the extinct taxa data points on, and then decided that the theropods were warm-blooded, they were endothermic, and everything else was ectothermic. Endothermy in theropods is well documented. We know that.
Yeah, we know that.
But from other lines of data, we know that ornithischians a lot of them were also endothermic as well, and the sauropods were also endothermic, probably evolving it before the theropods, maybe in the Triassic. And a lot of pterosaurs were probably endothermic as well. So that's also a problem that encountered, because that either elated or underestimated the neuron counts in some of these animals.
Yeah. So yeah, basically as you can see, so they're all plotted there. The sauropods in green as the asterisks, and the theropods are all up in the top range. And then so what they did then was their second assumption was that the theropods would have had telencephalic neuron density. So that's the density of the neurons in that region of the brain that we were talking about. They would be as dense as modern birds.
Yeah,
they just assumed that based on the fact that they found them to be endothermic, which itself was just based on relative brain size, essentially. And they didn't really give any other justification for that. So then they applied the bird-like neuron density to that, and that's how they got these really ridiculously huge neuron density values. So that's why
written there, T-Rex. The result was T-Rex had a neuron count of 3.3 billion.
Which, for reference, humans are 15 to 20 billion.
Yes.
It's more than a baboon, as we stated earlier. More than a lot of sort of anthropoid primates. And a lot of other theropods also came out similar range. Like Allosaurus had more neurons than a macaque. I'm trying really hard not to say more intelligent, because
it doesn't always mean that.
Neurons do not necessarily mean, but it can be used for higher abilities.
Yeah, I'm saying
very tricky.
Didn't you say it's comparable to a capuchin monkey?
I've got some written down here. So
Triceratops less than the capybara. Sauropod, Anioguera, and then you had Pterodactylus less than a mouse.
Yeah, so
which I think is actually quite funny.
Alioramus was comparable to a capuchin monkey.
I was just going to quickly point out so people understand what's going on in the graphs. So down the y-axis, axes. That's basically the neuron density that's showing there. And then you can see so that the top asterisks around this region, that's going to be like the big theropods like T-Rex, Acrocanthosaurus as well as up there. And as you can see, that is same neuron density level as a bunch of these primates as the circles. So that's their results. That's what was being reported on last year. So I mean, it is an interesting idea, and it should also be said that I can't pronounce the name. Sorry. But
should we go with HH?
They do keep referring to her as HH in the. I don't want to be disrespectful because she's done a lot of really really great work, and like shown that this neuron density method can be used potentially as a proxy for cognitive capability, although that has been argued against, I believe. But it generally can work in living animals. It's just when they've tried to apply this to very long extinct dinosaurs that it's some of the methods they used made it not as reliable. So this paper is essentially just saying, we need to use all of the evidence together instead of just this interesting new method. We can't rely on this itself. say, oh yeah, they were definitely doing these behaviors, the extreme claims of tool use and and metabolic rate as well. Oh, so another thing that's been pointed out is that, and this was in the new paper, you also can't use brain size by itself to predict the neuron counts necessarily. So there's a cool example that they use here, looking at a bunch of animals from different groups that have similar brain masses. Looking at a turtle, the neuron count was about 14.3 million. A similar sized shrew, 58.8 million, and then another similar sized passerine bird is 164 million. So similar sized brains, but it's different layout and everything, and it's very different neuron densities. So yeah, just a point that it's not always totally reliable.
I think
living animal.
Well, I like what was it Darren's podcast mentioned about the giraffes and orcas, because I thought that was quite funny actually.
Yeah.
Having such a high brain neuron count, and then don't really see them.
Yeah, exactly.
Being that intelligent,
isn't it that giraffes have 1.7 billion. That's their count, which is more than corvids and most primates. But you don't necessarily consider giraffes to be like a particularly intelligent, whatever that word means by a human metric. They're not always displaying intelligent behaviors necessarily. So again, it might just be because they are big animals that they
absolute values are not always a great indicator.
Yeah, but then also so pilot whales and orcas apparently have more than 30 billion their neuron counts, which again, humans 15 to 20 billion, more than 30 billion is kind of insane. But again, orcas are very complex animals with cultural transmission and very complex behaviors, so could have something to do with it. And again, they're just huge animals compared to us. So yeah,
it's more to operate.
Yeah, exactly. So also, interesting things to keep in mind. Yeah.
So shall we move on to the bulk, the new stuff?
Yeah, what they found. So I've got some other. This is basically their results right here. The main things that they did, and we'll explain what all of this means. It's a lot of looking at graphs, but they are very interesting when you realize what they're saying.
It's colored.
Yeah, I do like the color coding. It's very nice. Helps to look at.
So I think they've gone first to whether they were using crocodilian or avian style brains, and that's where they go into crocodilian brains being the ancestral state for ornithodyrans, which is the dinosaurs and pterosaurs, and that's where they state croc brains don't take up entire space.
Yeah, exactly.
And they actually get proportionally smaller as they get bigger, rather compared to juveniles. So that's where some of the data from juvenile taxa
some inconsistent. And so it is an inference, but it is also based on what we know from the fossils. That basically, when you get to Maniraptor forms, as you can see here, that's the main clade. That includes things like oviraptorosaurs, the dromaeosaurs, and birds themselves. That's when the brains start to get more bird-like, but again, it's going to be a bit of a gradient. And so they start to take up more of the endocranium. But in things like other theropods, tyrannosaurs, it's going to be more like the crocodilian, basal archosaurian.
I believe
condition.
They found like scarring on the endocasts of Maniraptor.
Yeah, so that's how they can tell that they were filling that space.
Yes. Which is quite interesting because that all shows when that sort of brain morphology started to appear.
Yeah, so it's really cool that we can tell that.
And I don't know whether that's like new knowledge or whether
I assume it's based on fossils that they found, but now it's like been put
something
together.
new we learned.
Yeah.
Also, pterosaur brains also fill the cavity.
Yeah, that's cool as well. But they didn't really touch on pterosaurs here.
So
they decided to leave that because the whole media thing was about T-Rex. So that's what they went with. But this is essentially their results summarized in a way, and it's mainly A and B that we're looking at here. So the really interesting. Sorry, yeah.
Oh no, go on.
Oh, well, the interesting thing is that they actually divided up the non-bird Maniraptor forms, so things like dromaeosaurs, oviraptors, and the non-Maniraptor form theropods, so all the other theropods, like T-Rex itself. And you see that they're very different. They plot in different lines. So this regression line here at the top in pink is using their bird sample, and as you can see, the non-bird Maniraptoriforms plots like along here, but not particularly high above it. And so this is brain mass to body mass ratios. And then the other theropods,
the sauropsid line,
including T-Rex, they plot along the sauropsids, so modern reptiles.
That's probably the most interesting thing. Move on to B, so that's sort of like a close-up.
Yes, this expands it a bit.
Yeah, and you can see, unlike before, the non-Maniraptoran theropods are actually clustering with the rest of dinosaurs.
They're
sauropods.
So together.
There actually wasn't any difference between their brain mass and body mass.
Yeah.
Unlike previously stated, they probably had similar morphology.
Yeah, exactly.
Neuron.
So they did make like their own new kind of calculations for some of this, and a lot of it was based on the literature. And then these, so the darker green bits and this black dot here, this is variations in the T-Rex samples. So they sampled, I think it was 3 different T-Rex brains. This black dot at the top, which as you can see is the closest it gets to the bird line, is assuming that the brain takes up 100% of the endocranial volume. There's 100% EV.
And I think in her paper that was 343 grams.
Yes.
Whereas if you use the 2%, which is seen in alligator Mississippiensis, is that how you say it?
Alligator Mississippiensis.
There we go.
Yeah.
You got it. It actually comes out about 200 grams, so you're losing about a third, really.
Yeah, there was a bit of an overestimate.
Brain mass, which rapidly those neural counts.
Then this 57% filled value here is from another 2016 paper, which just did like an analysis of T-Rex brains, and then the 31 to 42% are the calculations in this new study, going by assuming that they're crocodilian-like, which is more likely, and filling 31 to 42% of the volume. It just shows that even at 100%, it gets close to the bird line, but 100% isn't like reliable. Probably isn't what it was doing, and so it's much closer to the sauropsid, the living reptile.
I find that so interesting how the 57% and the 41.42%, they're so close together, which shows that it's like you said. We agree it's more likely to be on the croc or the crocodilian lineage or line.
Yeah, and so even if you go slightly above to the 57%, it's not reaching bird levels.
No, that's actually really cool.
But again, this is just showing brain mass to body mass.
Isn't going on?
Yeah. So I think it's the next one. Here we go. So this is doing the actual estimates of the neurons, and it's not that it's a lot of data.
It hurts my head, honestly.
But don't click away yet. We will break it down and we'll show why it's important.
You can break that down.
you could do it. I think Eddie and I will just.
I'll try. I'll attempt.
We're watching amazement.
Basically, what's happening here, as you can see, so they do call it HH 2023. This is in pink is from the 2023 paper. In blue is from this paper. These ones, I believe, are from a 2016 paper.
This is all T-Rexes.
This is all for T-Rex, that should be pointed out. So the brain volume itself, and then just the telencephalon. So this is for the full brain, and this is just for the front region that we've been talking about in this 2016 paper. And as you can see, it's a spread of different estimates. So that 3.3 billion estimate that was making around in the media, that's this one here, as you can see. So 3.3 billion is about here. And that is assuming for this one T-Rex endocast specimen that the brain is taking up the full endocast, which it's not. Taking it down to 50%, it's over 2 billion. So the boxes as well, that's using avian level neuron densities, which was the assumption, which, as we've explained, it's
unlikely,
more like a crocodilian or a living reptile like density. They did also estimate it with the crocodilian-like or living reptile-like density, and this is the values they get, so under 1 billion. So that's with 100% again, and that's with 50% volume. It's when you make the incorrect, as far as we know, assumption that it was filling the entire cavity, plus the incorrect, as far as we know, assumption that they had avian-like densities instead of reptilian-like densities. Yeah, that's when you get the 3.3 billion estimate, and that's when you get to baboon-like levels.
Yeah.
So probably not. As you can see, it's way off, and all of the values from this work, even at the percentages, where they're going up a bit in the estimates, so it's 57%, is that as high as they go? I think, yeah. Plus the avian like ones, it's, they're not getting quite as high because, again, they've refined the phylogenetic methods and the comparisons. So that's the unlikely estimates that they're getting in this new paper, but the more likely estimates are going to be with the reptilian philo ones, so the squares, plus with like 42%. So it's all clustering down here, basically. These are the more realistic values, these blue squares down here.
Do they only go up to 50%? Oh, because they're following the other graph, aren't they? So
yeah, so that's the higher, 100% isn't happening. The 57 is a higher estimate for that. And then this is just another study that only looked at the telencephalon, and they again went with fairly high probable overestimates, and that's why they're getting up there. So yeah, basically, with their revised estimates, they're showing that it's all going to be below 1 billion, like quite a significant margin.
I think they sort of come away with, because the non-Maniraptor and theropods were falling within a range of reptiles, they come away with an estimate of probably about 133 to 166 million
so that
telencephalic neurons, whereas using the avian scaling, just they get up to 1.5 billion, which is a bit under half of 3.3 billion. So that's sort of the main takeaway, that these theropods were falling within range of just reptiles, your archosaurs, but your more derived Maniraptor forms are falling within range of birds. They probably do have similar densities.
Yeah, and you expect as they get more bird-like, gonna be having there's more bird-like brains. So have we kind of summarized the results there? Because we've got some follow-up as well. So what the authors have been saying on Twitter. So this is one of the responses on Twitter from the original 2023 author, Susanna Herculano Huzel. Sorry if I've said that wrong. I probably have. But anyway, they're just responding initially to the paper. I don't know, because as you just said, it's not at the very least.
At the very most.
At the very most, it's 1.5 billion.
It's more likely to be 100 million, which is like a magnitude lower.
Yeah. And I get you. Yeah, take that as you will. The one thing I did want to say is down here, they also again say, our disagreement lies in that I argued, based on raw evidence on body and estimated brain size, that T-Rex did scale like a warm-blooded modern ostrich, whereas Casper and colleagues stick to the older view that all dinosaurs, T-Rex included, were more like crocodiles in both body temperature and cognitive capacity, and emphasize that possibility. I believe the various lines of evidence provided in my original 22 make a compelling case that T-Rex was warm-blooded. Now, this is strange because I don't know. I guess they're not up to date with the paleontological consensus, because we all agree
the
that
2024 paper does quite explicitly state that they were endothermic.
I took literally a line from the paper. This is a direct quote. Multiple lines of evidence suggest that ornithodira and endothermy evolved long before theropods emerged and was likely already present in the early Triassic common ancestor of dinosaurs and pterosaurs. So this statement is entirely false. They don't say that. And I don't know if they're just like not up to date with like paleontological consensus, because it's well understood that T-Rex was warm-blooded, and they're not like the first one to point that out. So I don't know, just a strange response there. But yeah, whatever. The next response we've got is from Kai Casper, lead author himself. Basically, this is Susanna Herculano Huzel again saying that the inclusion of pelicans, albatrosses, egrets, and penguins in the sample of birds that they use in this new study kind of creates a skew, because in her original study they only used ratites, which are like she did not use ratites.
She also used to compare.
Yeah.
She also used
pigeons, landfowl, and waterfowl.
Also falcons. She did also use them when looking at the brain to body mass scaling, but she did find that theropods did not scale. Different. Yeah, did not scale with them.
So I think
but she included them anyway. So
okay, but not in like the main.
So I don't see why
part.
Including
Well, I think
other derived birds doesn't.
Yeah, essentially what she used in as her reference group was what she called pre-KPG groups. Yeah. So paleognaths, Galoanceri, and columbiforms, which are ones that probably even potentially have originated in the Cretaceous, maybe through the extinction. So like some of the very basally branching groups of birds. And she's essentially criticizing them for including these groups, the core water birds they're called, acornithes, the albatrosses, pelicans, albatrosses, egrets, and penguins, because on average they have larger brains for their body masses than most of the ones that she used. But then, as Kai Kasper here argues, some waterfowl, here it is, some of the waterfowl that she used actually have relative brain sizes that overlap with or exceed the ones that they used in their examples. But he says that it's a valid criticism of the sample composition, because there are some differences between the basal living birds that she used and the core water birds. But it still doesn't invalidate what they say, because basically he does another test here as he shows. And again, like they're not getting close to even these
they include them
larger ones. Yeah. And then also says, the comparing apples and oranges quote is essentially what they did in that 2023 paper, because they don't split up the Maniraptora form and the non-Maniraptora forms, which again have very different brain structures. They just lump them all together.
Yeah, it's tricky because that's the thing. Like when it comes to dinosaurs, they're often all grouped together as we know, they're a very, very diverse group.
Yeah,
especially very different morphologies. So if you're going to break birds up into different clades, then you can do this with dinosaurs.
Yeah, exactly. So that was just a maybe they should have just stuck with the same ones that she used. They say that would have again, right here actually, even if they stuck with the exact same selection, it's still an extreme contrast between it. And then again, it doesn't really change much of the conclusions. So that's but maybe that's something that could be in a follow-up paper. See? Some more follow-up from Darren Naish. There were just some good points here about
read his blog post if you want.
Yes,
it's really good.
Nice summary of this, because it's done. It reads quite well and it's quite easy to understand.
Yeah, this is a really, really concise, good breakdown of it
by one of the authors.
Yeah. But basically saying that even reptile smart dinosaurs probably were. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Like modern crocs and lizards can show very complex behaviors, not just mammals that have complex. So,
but we have evidence of some dinosaurs showing what we would consider complex behaviors, such as parental care and stuff like that.
Exactly, and that's and crocs look after their young, don't they?
Yeah, we have really amazing photos of gharials. We have all the baby gharials on top of the big dad or the mum. We've got alligators holding babies in their mouths.
Yeah. So essentially, he's just saying that not having baboon-like intelligence doesn't take anything away from the complexity of these animals. They're still performing lots of complicated behaviors, because modern reptiles can do that. They're not all dumb.
Tool using.
Just probably not tool using.
That's actually a really interesting point I read just before we started going live. In the paper, they say that
the day I see a crocodile climb over like a fence with like a shovel is the day I know a Tyrannosaurus could use
I didn't write down
a branch.
Basically, you're saying tool use is often seen in animals that don't that show unusual behavior, but they don't have the morphology to sort of function it.
Yeah,
and it's normally seen in like island birds rather than mainland.
I
animals.
I remember this.
That's what I was saying beforehand. And they said, well, T-Rex has a nice big head, lots of big sharp teeth, so it didn't need anything else to hunt.
Yeah, there's no, as far as we can see, there's no like selection pressure that you'd expect they would make them use tools necessarily. They've got everything they needed. So just that as well. He also says how fish have quite complex behavior as well.
Yeah, well, you see them. I don't know if guys have seen things like Planet Earth and all that. You see them building like nests underwater.
Exactly.
It's the type of fish that makes art in the sand.
No, I know what you're talking about.
It's because in the fossil record as well, there's like imprints of fish making
well, in hell, you got
I can't remember his name.
fish and octopus working together.
Yeah, exactly.
Octopus is an invertebrate.
Yeah, octopuses are just a completely alien, insane kind of intelligence.
Probably are aliens.
Yeah, but, yeah, they're amazing. I need to do some videos on octopuses. I've been reading about them a bit and mind blowing. But imagine having like 9 brains divided up into different parts.
What would you
of
get for the
bodies.
neuron count of a
Oh, they should do that. Yeah.
Orthoceras?
That would
Is
be
it?
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the giant orthocones.
Yeah,
That'd be amazing.
would be cool. And then just very quickly, the final thing I wanted to mention before we kind of conclude is this other paper that you mentioned at the start by a neurobiologist who independently kind of came to the conclusion that it was unlikely and potentially based on the inferred brain structures, kind of impossible for dinosaurs to ever evolve a human level of intelligence. And this also includes my favorite figure in any scientific paper ever, if we just scroll down a little bit. Here we go.
Yes.
Because not only have we got the brilliant
Dinosauroid.
Dale Russell Dinosauroids, we also have a Gorn from Star Trek.
Have you gone to see the dinosaur? Yeah.
In Dorset.
I've seen the one in Dorset.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I remember once going to that museum and I was terrified of that corner. I would
So,
not go
yeah.
anywhere near the
They are
corner.
brilliant. But I think the
Oh.
originals are in Canada somewhere still.
Yeah, you've also got I mean, we haven't included it, but what that TV show like from I think like the late
Oh,
90s.
Wait,
Dinosaurs?
Dinosapien? You mean?
Yeah.
The one that was on CBBC?
Yeah.
Yeah, with Eno.
Yes,
Yeah.
I know
Yeah,
this. I know that show.
I know.
Yeah.
Is it the one where like the ankylosaurs are like broken free from?
Yeah,
like,
there's
this,
Bipedal ankylosaurs that were the villains. Yeah.
I remember that show.
Also, just quickly, you should all watch Star Trek Strange New Worlds. That's very Gorn focused. It's very cool. And they kind of redesigned them a bit. I really liked it though.
John Civic's one.
Anyway, yes.
Yeah,
that,
John Civic
that
worked on
dinosaur is
Yeah.
there.
Star Trek.
Sure.
Oh yeah, of course. But anyway, essentially, I tried to summarize this paper. Basically, a dinosaur pallium, so that's the bit in the telencephalon that we've all been talking about, would probably have been unable to achieve a human-like intelligence based on, so there's a quote from the paper, based on some important fundamental differences in organization between an avian-type nuclear pallium and mammalian sheet-like cerebral cortex. So they're assuming that a bit of the dinosaur actual brain structure and everything would be more like birds than mammals. So they don't mean that comparable cognitive abilities can't evolve between non-human mammals and birds, because obviously, you get very complex behaviors and tool use in birds. But it might mean that human level intelligence could never evolve in a bird, basically. And could not have evolved in dinosaurs either.
For now. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows about in the future. But yeah, essentially it's the organization of the pallium itself. Something about in dinosaurs and the bird-style brain, they have to have increased axon lengths, which actually impairs processing efficiency. In mammals, they manage to shorten them. And the dinosaur pallium could not reduce this axon length by folding to bring... So there's some nice figures down here if I just scroll. They couldn't fold them, essentially, which we see in the mammalian cerebral cortex. Here we go. So this is the mammal style something.
Just look
part
at
of
your reaction.
I
Yeah,
just saw
it's-
that and my mind just went fuzzy.
Yeah, sorry. I'm out of my depth here, but essentially, because it can
Oh, okay.
fold, it can bring these regions closer together and
So they can be
shorten
shorter.
the axons,
Hmm.
and that basically makes them more efficient.
Hmm.
But it can't happen in it's called a nuclear design. This is the kind of bird avian style
So it's
brain.
got like layers instead.
Yeah, so it can't fold and it can't bring them closer. You see the cortical design, which is what mammals have. These can fold to be brought together. Never mind, I didn't write it down. But basically, these things are important to be closer together, and they're saying that can't happen in dinosaurs, and this is why you couldn't get the equivalent in a dinosaur-style, avian-style brain as you can in a mammal-style brain. Is essentially what I understand. So the cell groups are scattered throughout a large 3D mass in avians/dinosaurs, but in mammals, the neurons are arrayed into layered sheets at the surface, and these can be folded. So basically, from another neurobiologist's perspective, it's again not likely that they could ever have primate level, well, maybe non-human primate level intelligence, but not necessarily. So, yeah, it kind of complements the other study. Hopefully, I got most of that right. Let's go back to this nice.
You mentioned about you just made the little comment saying that maybe in the future there's that book you like.
Oh yeah, Children of Memory. It's part of the Children of Time series. It features some intelligent corvids on an alien planet that evolved. They brought an alien planet. Anyway, I could talk for ages about that. But yeah, it's great. It's a really cool book. I would recommend.
This is probably most definitely not a closed book. I'm sure there'll be more papers on this
Oh,
in the
yeah.
future.
Yeah, definitely. It's gonna keep. It seems like HH. I'm sorry. Will probably respond, which would be interesting to see.
But I'm sure maybe new lines of evidence might appear. Hopefully, even like actual fossil evidence.
That'd be fantastic.
That will help back up either claim.
Yeah, a whole dinosaur brain in amber. We need that.
I'm excited for this will be a Spinosaur debate 2.0 with
Oh, that will
get
go
back
that
and
long.
forth.
That's a lot more infamous. That's an episode to do.
Yeah.
Oh, I would love that one. You know me and my
It'll be like those
Spinos.
24-hour long live stream.
You know me and my Spinosaurs.
We could do that.
I
But
have
yeah,
an idea.
I hopefully we haven't seemed like we're being disrespectful to I really feel
Susanna.
like Herculano.
Yeah, Susanna's a
Hazel.
good one to go.
Because obviously that they like
Yes.
they have made very important
Very accomplished
contributions.
scientist.
Yeah, and you know we're not neuroscientists. We don't understand most of what they're saying, but from a paleontological perspective, it needs more caution when being applied to dinosaurs. I think we say that.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be used just by itself to make these dramatic claims about intelligence, behaviors, and especially not metabolic rates. When there's all this other evidence that we already have established shows that these dinosaurs were endothermic.
What is it you say? The bones don't lie.
Yeah, the bones don't lie. I should
Yeah.
say that. That's the thing about paleontology in the day, and when you get close to paleoneurology and how the brain works, it's all speculative at the end of the day. It's what we're hoping to find.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, so it's very interesting, and definitely like if it can be refined, could be a good way. Yeah, a good new method, a good like a tool, a new method in our toolkit to use. But it should be used alongside all these other. Is one of the arguments made in the paper. And again, the reliability of this new method heavily depends on the modern relatives that we choose. And so you need this understanding of the phylogenetic relationships of all of these animals and how they relate to each other to properly apply it. But yeah, it's very interesting, and I'm sure it won't be the end. We can give an update in a future Boneheads, hopefully.
Let us know your thoughts on.
Definitely. Yeah, let's see. What do you think about this Tyrannosaurus using tools and
or
the
not?
rebuttals and the rebuttal to it?
Absolutely. Yeah, so thank you for watching. Also, you should definitely become a member because we are going to be doing a bonus Boneheads. We're going to film it right after this, and we're just going to do probably just a short discussion on a couple of new papers talking about the new English raptor.
It's my turn.
So you get a lot more from Hamzah, and potentially also the Tychodus shark body reveal.
Yeah.
But yeah, so just some extra bonus content for members. Hope you enjoy that.
The bonus.
Yeah, it's mainly
bonus.
It's mainly just reporting on the British news that we have, and also just more of an informal thing, just discussing it. So
yeah, we just thought
fun.
It'd be fun to give some extra content to members. So please say if you want to support us and you want access to all that. But otherwise, thank you for watching.
See you next year.
Yeah. Bye.